He's now lost all his teeth.
What did you do to him?
Punched him
Had all
multiple
his
times.
teeth taken out.
Hello, do you guys mind if we do a show here?
Yeah, we kind of do. We're having fun talking about animals. And I haven't even
There's
gone
more
over the
important
horses.
things to talk about here, Kevin.
Oh, jeez. All right, recording. 3, 2.
Hi, this is Phil Ferguson. I took a left at the Valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Recovering from an awful flu, this is Left at the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I can summarize that only the mediocre are always at their best. Joining me as usual is the team that claim that people who think they know everything are annoying to those of us who do.
Yep. I have experience with that.
Indeed. Her fake plants died because she didn't pretend to water them, Nancy.
Fantasy plants. That's what they all are. Fantasy plants.
And he says that laugh and the world laughs with you, snore and you sleep alone, Scott.
I know that.
For a fact.
I don't just say it, I live it.
She'll tell you to go to heaven for the climate and hell for the company, Christina.
Yep. Because you know what? Unless hell is cold.
Indeed.
Then I'd go to hell. Because I don't like heat.
And she believes age is unimportant unless you're a cheese, Kirsten.
Very true.
Or wine.
Oh,
Yes,
wine,
or
yeah.
wine.
If you're gonna be a cheese, you gotta
Wine
be
can
the
go
big
with the
cheese.
cheese.
Guys, welcome
I
back.
know.
Hope you had a great week. We're going to have a bit of a different kind of show today because we have some guests in the studio. We have our old friend Chris, the Christiansen, and his faithful companion Zach. Guys, welcome back to Left of the Valley.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us, Kevin.
What's that?
Thanks for having us.
Oh,
we're always
don't thank
glad
me yet.
Yeah, we're always glad to have you. Standing invitation. Or sitting invitation.
In this case, yeah. So today we're going to have a show. We're going to be trying to have a nice, respectful conversation between Christians and atheists. I've put away all weapons and all condiments and fruits and all that. So
except for the size you have hanging on your wall.
Yes, and I've got
sword.
and the swords and the battle axe right beside me here. Yes, absolutely. They're all within arm's reach.
I like the battle axe.
Don't you do
That's my
martial
favorite
arts?
weapon.
Don't you not need weapons?
Yeah, but it's never
weapons
it's not a
make
bad
it
thing to
more
have an
fun.
edge.
They're pretty.
What if Jesus comes in and gets in between me and you all of a sudden? What happens then, right? I got to go through him first. But first, we'll do a bit of chit-chat. Did you guys... Anybody watch that rare blue /blood supermoon?
It
I
was
missed
cloudy.
It was cloudy, Kevin.
Yeah, I read about it and then I missed it.
I tried to jump up past the clouds, but they were too high.
Oh, you mean your rocket powered by steam didn't work?
That's happening today.
Oh, that's today?
Today?
That's
Oh, we
happening
should
today.
be watching that.
You
That's
know.
exciting.
Zach, there was to fill you in, Zach and Chris, there's a guy called Mad Mike Hughes, and he's built a steam-powered rocket, and he wants to launch himself to a high altitude of 1,800 feet, which is 550 meters, so he can prove that the Earth is covered with a dome and the Earth is flat.
Well, to be fair, it is only his test flight. This is the test, and then assuming he survives,
I'm at a
which I
loss
highly
for
doubt.
And so are we. So you have to be in for that. So anyway, going back on the moon there, in case you guys didn't know, a blue moon is actually the second full moon in a month, and a red moon or blood moon is essentially a moon that is facing an eclipse. Right, so the sun has been on the Earth, and only the red light goes through, and it makes the moon look red. And also, it was the closest in the orbit, which made it a supermoon.
Gosh, why? This is the one time I hate living in a cloudy place.
It was the first time in 150 years this has happened, and it's going to be a while. That you have all the trifecta of the moon there, and the moon was apparently 14% brighter.
Oh, wow!
So
that's actually visibly brighter.
Yeah,
that's sad that we didn't get to see it.
Okay, let's go back to something even more sad. Did you guys hear there might be a serial killer in Toronto?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bruce MacArthur is 66 years old. Apparently 5 men from the gay village were killed, and he buried them in planters.
Oh, I read a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But, I need the details.
Well, there's not a whole lot of details at this point. Right now, they're kind of comparing it to Picton and what
Lord.
he did here.
Yeah, except this guy, this Bruce MacArthur, from what I've been reading, everybody says no, he was quite the family man.
Apparently,
he was very active with his family.
Not the loner. Apparently,
he was active in his community.
Super nice.
Everyone knew who he was. He was very active in the community. He went to do community events, and he was giving to charity all the time, and it's like really weird, right?
It's amazing how many serial killers are able to blend in. It's like they have a total split in their personality. This is what I do to maintain my social persona, and now I can go out and kill people. I mean, it's just,
he also doesn't fit the profile at the age of 66. Most serial killers are much younger men.
Well, we don't know how long these bodies have been in the... How long's the
planters?
The five that they know about, how long have they been missing?
I'm not sure. It doesn't. In the
and he
article
could have started out with small animals, and then worked his way up.
And God
so
knows
you don't
the 5
know.
that we know and how many we don't know.
That's right.
So it's a story we'll have to keep an eye on.
I feel sorry for the people who had the planters on their properties, where the police showed up to the property and said, we have to search your planters, right?
Yeah.
You find bones at the bottom of the planters, and it's like, oh, what have we done? What have we bought into here? Right?
Did you guys hear that there was going to be a sequel to Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ?
Yeah, hasn't that been in the works for a while?
Actually, it has. Jim Cazavio.
What exactly is the sequel to?
Well, Jim Cazavio, apparently, he's going to reprise his role as Jeebus, and this time it's going to be focused on the resurrection. The original one cost $30 million to make and made about $611 million globally.
Did you see that one, Chris?
Yeah, I saw it.
Zach, did you see it?
Yeah, I saw that one.
What do you guys think of the movie?
What did you think of it?
Not bad, yeah. Sorry.
Wasn't at the top. I can tell it wasn't at the top of your list.
I enjoyed it. Like, for me, it definitely put into perspective what I already believed Christ went through for us. The only reason why I hesitated was I was thinking about it from a historical angle now that I've actually studied that time frame. Like the whipping scene. I don't think it would have went.
It was gore porn,
long,
really, to me, right? I mean, geez, the whipping scene, they had like a cat of 9 tails with metal spikes at the end. It's like, come on, it's a bit much.
No, actually, they would have used
that.
Yeah, that's actually historically.
I looked up a lot of this stuff myself after I watched the movie, and yeah.
That's one of the reasons why they actually think Jesus might have been like collapsing on the ground, was because the whipping would have been so bad he would have been in critical condition by that point.
Well, I think anybody would have been in critical condition with a whip like that.
So are you going to go see the sequel?
Yeah, might rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those people that don't know Chris, he's a punny man.
He is. And we're going to put him in the penitentiary if he keeps this up today.
All right. Did you guys hear that United Airlines barred a woman from bringing her, quote, emotional support peacock?
Okay, I got.
I saw something about that.
That's because you aren't allowed to bring emotional support animals on a plane.
Yes, you are. You are allowed to bring dogs.
Oh,
you're allowed to
okay.
bring cats, but they draw the line. Okay, explain to me exactly what an emotional support peacock is. All right, that is the biggest
It's a peacock
bunch of,
that listens to you.
I'm sorry, that is the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
I gotta wonder how well a peacock would do with air travel, like on a plane.
No, you just fly beside the plane.
Yeah.
Never mind snakes on a plane. We got peacocks on a plane now.
Oh, I want to see Christina bring her cow.
No,
that would be me.
It would be a miniature horse.
Well, that's okay.
That was horrible.
It would be a miniature horse.
And horses don't do air travel as well.
To be fair, she did buy a seat for the peacock, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She offered to buy a seat buy a ticket for the bird. United said it didn't meet the size, weight, and guidelines.
Oh, well, that I can understand. So it's not the bird itself. If it had been caged and it would have fit on
No,
the
she
seat.
actually had the bird. Like, the bird at some point was actually on her shoulder and everything, and it's a big male peacock with the big long tail.
Oh, well,
feathers
then
and
It still has a long tail and everything.
Then I can understand it.
Well, apparently
She just forgot to tell them he was coming along with her. It was an oversight.
in the past couple of years, there's been a 150% increase in service and for support animals and all that. But there's also been an 84% spike in accidents since 2016. Like emotional support dogs biting the passenger next door or stuff like that.
Well, the other thing they've had is that people are bringing emotional support animals on that aren't emotional support animals at all.
Yeah,
I would assume
they're lying about it.
Yeah, they would have to be. If you're going to bring an emotional support animal, seems as though it would have to be certified in some way.
See, the thing is, you can't there's no certification process for an emotional support animal.
I think
there is for a service animal.
Could be certified emotional.
But you can just print it one offline for emotional support animal.
I thought in some areas they actually did have some kind of certification. Maybe there's one that's needed at this point.
Yeah.
Christina, you and I need to look into that. Maybe
my personal view is that I agree with United for once. I actually agree with him. Don't let the peacock on the plane. You want the peacock to go, it's got to go in the cargo.
That's the discrimination against the otherwise feathered.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to see them try and fit that peacock in a crate.
Yeah.
Like, how big of a crate are they going to go here?
It would have to be a large animal crate, yeah.
But with that long tail?
And peacocks are loud. You ever heard a peacock when they make that sound?
They're so cool. I like the one that wanders around at the zoo.
Yeah,
he's
cool.
Cool.
His friend.
Did you guys hear that, speaking of Canadian news, 24 Sussex Drive, you guys know where that is? That is the residence of the Prime Minister?
Oh, okay, I do now.
Well, it should be the residence of the Prime Minister.
It's the official residence of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Trudeau moved his family out to Rideau Cottage because the house was in such dire needs of renovations.
It hasn't been being kept up to date?
It hasn't been being kept up to date.
Oh, no. It hasn't had any renovations
It doesn't even have air conditioning.
Wait.
Got
in the past 50 years.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
That was awesome.
It needs urgent repairs, and there's been no renovation in 50 years for the 35-bedroom house built in 1868.
Wow.
It would cost $10 million to renovate this
not
house.
That much.
We talk about windows, plumbing, electrical, heating, and air conditioning. Add some sprinklers and remove the asbestos.
Wait, there's asbestos?
Yeah,
of
course there's asbestos.
They need to get that done. I don't blame him for moving out.
How much did...
$10 million.
10 million.
Well,
they could build a new... What would it cost to raise it and build a new one?
You can't raise it. It's a protected property because it was built in 1868.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's historical.
It's historical.
The Prime Minister said he would actually rather not go back to the house. So that's interesting. And then now it might become a political hot potato too, because no Prime Minister wants to see themselves using taxpayer money to renovate the house for them. And this is why it hasn't been done in over 50 years. Because the opposition then jumps on and says, well, look at you living on the lap of luxury on taxpayer dime.
Yeah, but he's in the Rideau
Cottage,
which is the Prime Minister's personal cottage.
Yeah.
So he's not costing the taxpayers anything at this point. Mm-hmm. He is actually the cost would be in transporting him back and forth to Parliament Hill, rather than having him live on 24 Sussex. And
well, right? It's how you view it, right? It's how I guess he's afraid that it might become a political problem.
I can see
and the opposition party could very well do something like that, and maybe
maybe the opposition sway the government into fixing it without his permission.
Well,
See, now, if they fix it without his permission, it's not him spending the money. It would be the opposition spending the money, which falls right into his political lap.
Well,
saying,
it's a lose.
I'm the good guy here.
It's a lose-lose because you never know what party is going to be in the majority, and therefore, both parties are responsible.
Yeah. Maybe what they need to do is to renovate the house at the end of his term. So then they could be renovating the house for the potential next prime minister, and then maybe the opposition won't oppose
Maybe the prime minister shouldn't be renovating the house at all. Maybe it should be the house should belong to the government of Canada, and it's the federal institution's job to maintain the house in a livable state. That way, it's not connected to the political parties at all. Mm-hmm. It's done through the government itself.
Does it have to be used as a residence, or can they turn it into a museum of some kind? And then,
but it would still have to be renovated, right?
Yeah, but then
but it could be renovated like a part, like a little bit at a time, or something.
But then what happens to each new prime minister that comes in, where you have him or her live in their own place, their own apartment in Ottawa somewhere? The resident is different somewhere else?
No, then you'd have another... I guess you'd have to have another designated residence.
House, yeah.
It's kind of saying, let's abandon the White House and move the president somewhere else.
Isn't there a cost of living thing for all the politicians that are in Ottawa?
Yeah, they all have apartments in Ottawa anyway. All of our members of parliament have apartments in Ottawa because they all live in their own ridings, right? So what would be the difference for the Prime Minister? That's
interesting.
Well, they're going to have to put together a committee and, find a solution that nobody's happy about, and then it'll be fine.
Well, when Nancy's elected Prime Minister, we'll change all that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Canadian news, did you guys hear the Canadian national anthem actually becomes gender neutral?
That's a good thing.
Yes,
That's a good thing.
the Senate passed a bill, and the old line of "In all thy son commands" is going to become "In all of us commands."
See, I don't like the specific word they changed it to.
It doesn't flow as nicely.
Yeah, like if they'd done all of our command.
No, because it's in all of us commands.
Yeah, it commands all of us.
It commands all of us.
Okay.
Right?
I understand. Yeah. Okay, I see that.
So it needs royal assent at this point, but they've had their third reading. So there's been a lot of criticism from the Conservatives. What people might not know is just a form that we just had of the Canadian national anthem actually became the national anthem in 1980. It's fairly recent.
I remember.
So
I remember being in school for that.
It's very hard. It's very hard to go and say, "Oh, tradition." When it's
Well, and then you realize that in like 20 years, kids won't even know anything different. They'll just be like, "Oh yeah, that's how you sing the national anthem."
Exactly.
No, it's a good change. It's a proper change, and they've obviously thought it out. And yeah, it's
perfect. All right, moving on. My dear Nancy, you have another one of those top 10 lists today?
I do. And it's coincidental that the top 10 is the same time that we have our good friends.
It's almost
Chris
like it was
Zach.
prepared that way.
Almost. The top 10, almost. But it's just absolutely coincidental, and it happens to be the top 10 atheist books.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
I probably read some of them.
Yeah,
probably have.
That's right. You may have some of these listed in your thesis. We never know. Anyway, there really isn't a 1 to 10, but I'll do a 10 to 1 anyway because that's a lot of fun. Okay, the number 10 top atheist book is one by Bertrand Russell, Why I Am Not a Christian, and other essays on religion and related subjects. Anybody read that one?
No.
Oh, that's an old
Chris has.
one. Yeah, don't be turned off. I mean, when you think of the name Bertrand Russell, it's a very formal name, and when you think about a lot of modern writers, versus the older style, you might be put off. But it is an outstanding book, and it forms the basis of a lot of books that were that came along after that. I was very surprised that Robert Ingersoll wasn't on this list, but I'm happy that whoever did this list did include Bertrand Russell. So it really is a must read. Not tomorrow, but they're really good read. They're essays and they're not all that long. Number 9. Atheism, The Case Against God by George Smith. Anybody read that one? Well,
no.
So far we're
we're 0 for 2 here.
Okay, that book is theism a reasonable and rational position, or can a better case be made for atheism and against faith in the existence of gods? So that's supposed to be an interesting book. Those are 2, if you haven't read them, put them on your list, and maybe there'll be something in there that, maybe a point of view that you've overlooked and can add to some of your thinking. Number 8, author Victor Stenger. Anyone familiar?
Victor Stenger, yeah, of course.
Okay.
The late Victor Stenger.
Okay. The book that is listed here is God, the Failed Hypothesis, How Science Shows That God Does Not Exist. And it's supposed to be what do you know about Stenger's book?
He's brilliant. He's extremely eloquent. I did not read his book, but I tried to, shortly before he died, I tried to get him as an interview.
Oh, okay.
And he passed kind of suddenly there, and it's a shame. It's one of those interviews that would have been absolutely... He's a bit like Jerry Coyne in that sense.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's very eloquent. He's very... He used like 25-letter long words all the time. It's very up there.
Oh, okay. So can you download any videos if people don't want to, if they want to get an idea of who he is? Is it possible?
Yeah,
to
you
get
totally
videos
can. And some of his books have become audiobooks as well, with the help of our friend David Smalley there.
Okay.
From Dogma Debate. So he's done some of his books. So.
Oh, okay. Christina, did you say you had read that one?
No,
too?
I haven't read that one yet, but it definitely sounds like one I'd be interested in reading. Anything with science.
Okay. Number 7 by Dan Barker, Losing Faith in Faith, From Preacher to Atheist. Anybody read that one?
No, but
Dan Barker's a pretty well-known.
I listened to quite a few of his interviews.
Yeah, and we had him on the show too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. Dan was great.
So that's one that we've had. If anyone wants to look that up on our podcast list, you can hear the interview and then go on and read the book.
And probably one of the greatest line I heard from Dan Barker was when people say, when they say, what's your purpose if there's no God? And he said, what a sad line to say. It's akin to saying, if there's no master, whose slave should I be? And I thought it was just a brilliant line.
Yeah. Chris, is that one that's on your list since he started out as a Christian and then changed?
I haven't read his stuff. I've just finished editing a book, though, that engaged with some of his arguments, so I've got some familiarity with them.
Yeah, okay, good. Number 6, Sam Harris, one of our more well-known, and his book, Letter to a Christian Nation.
I have it right here.
That one you've read?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, anybody else read that one?
It's not a big book, but it's really to the point, when he talks to Christian, and it's like banging there, and Zach's trying to find the book in the bookcase. It's up there somewhere, Zach. I'll let it to you if you want.
I believe you.
I'll let it to you if you want. It's a good book. It's not a big book. It's actually a fairly small book, but it's really poignant and direct to the point.
He's got so many videos. Did he do this one as a video or as a talk?
I don't know. Not I'm aware of.
Yeah, okay. Number 5 is The End of Faith, Religion, Terror, and Future of Reason. Again, Sam Harris. So 2 Sam Harris's books. And the book description on this is that the book delivers a startling analysis of the clash of faith and reason in today's world, and he offers a vivid historical tour of mankind's willingness to suspend reason in favor of religious beliefs. Is that a pretty fair description?
No, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Speaking of Sam Harris, he's going to be in the area. He's going to face off against Jordan Peterson.
Oh.
And I can't remember which. It's happening fairly soon.
I think it's in Ontario.
No, I thought it was here in Vancouver.
No. Not with Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
With the one with Jordan Peterson is in Ontario.
Look it up, guys, and let me know.
Yeah, so if you wanted to...
at the center of the universe.
So which of these Sam Harris books would you read first? Letter to a Christian Nation or End of Faith?
I'm pretty sure I read both.
I mean, which one would you start with, or does it make a difference?
If you want to get used to Sam Harris and his way of reading, you start with the Letter to a Christian Nation. It's smaller, and it gives you a bit of an intro into him.
Okay.
And then of course,
Sounds good.
My first experience with Harris was The Moral Landscape.
Oh yeah, okay.
I read that, and I read End of Faith.
Yeah. What do you think of him as an author?
He's got a very engaging writing style. Like, I actually laughed at a few of his jokes and whatnot. Obviously, didn't agree with where he ended up going with it, but, it was easy enough to read. It was easy enough to follow his train of thought on most of the issues. The only thing I kind of couldn't track with was where he got more into the Eastern philosophy side of his worldview and how he saw that as a way of, encouraging morals. I couldn't quite make the connection between what he was saying and his end point. So,
yeah. Oh, good. I'd like to get everybody's point of view.
And anybody who wants to know more about Sam Harris, there are tons of videos on YouTube about him debating other people, and they're usually absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so number 4, this is one I think everybody is familiar with, by Christopher Hitchens. God is Not Great.
Absolutely.
And how many of us have read God is Not Great?
I have it right over there.
Right over there. Yeah. Chris, is that one that you use as a reference? Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually the one that I've had the hardest time getting through. I've been working on it for 3 years. I've read The God Delusion. I've read End of Faith. Had the hardest time getting through Hitchens.
Hitchens had an interesting way of speaking and writing. I mean, he again, very, very eloquent, and you realize, when you start reading Hitchens, it's like, okay, your brain's got to jump up a notch here and start really paying attention, because otherwise you get lost real quick.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, number 3 Daniel Dennett, again, one of the four horsemen, Breaking the Spell, Religion as a Natural Phenomenon. That's supposed to be a fairly controversial book. Is anybody...
I haven't read it.
I think that has to do with his referring to, at least a part of it has to do with him referring to certain people as brights. And the implications for those that do not hold to that particular view.
Yeah, him and Dawkins had an idea of doing that to try to get away from the word atheist because it has such a negative connotation, and maybe started calling people brights, but that kind of backfired on them.
Yeah, did you find Dennett easier to get through than Hitchens?
I've got his book in my library. I don't think I've actually read through it yet.
No, I think they're about the same.
Yeah.
In their speech pattern.
Number 2, this is an interesting one because I'm not familiar with the author. David Mills, Atheist Universe: The Thinking Person's Answer to Christian Fundamentalism. That was a surprise. I mean, it depends on top 10s depends on who's making the list.
Yeah, of course.
Which makes it interesting because then as we go through them, we can decide, okay, would this be the list I'd put together or what's missing? So this one I'm not familiar with at all. Anybody familiar at all?
I haven't read that, no.
Yeah. The description on this is that it's a clear, concise, and persuasive book that details exactly why God is unnecessary to explain the universe and life's diversity, organization, and beauty. So, sounds interesting. He uses logic, common sense, philosophy, ethics, history, and science, which is a lot to pack into one book. Okay, number 1. Anybody want to guess what number 1 is?
It's got to be The God Delusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
It had to be that one.
It really did.
The only book on this list I've actually read.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. This list happens to be from booktalk.org, but when I researched to find the top 10 atheist books on other lists, it's just impossible to find a list that doesn't have Richard Dawkins and The God Delusion as the top book to read. So everybody's read that one, and you have to work your way down the list.
I have not.
You have not?
What?
Yeah.
I have not read anything on this.
A lot of
list.
a lot of atheists credit that book with being that book that really made him switch.
The thing is, Kirsten, I'm just going to jump in here for you. She didn't grow up religious, so
That's
for
right,
her,
that's right.
it wasn't like, oh, what is this? Non-religion.
Yeah,
For me,
she didn't need persuasion.
Exactly.
The God Delusion was actually the first book I read when I became an atheist, because and none of my family actually knew I was an atheist then, so I kind of had to sneak it into the house. It was really fun.
So what book that you've read that you think should be on a top 10 that wasn't on this one?
Oh goodness, that's the book that's strictly atheism, because atheism can encompass a lot of things. For example, Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene. That's a book about genes and chromosomes. It's not about atheism, but it makes a very extremely strong case for evolution at that point, which is in a way almost tied to atheism, because I have a hard time finding an atheist that doesn't support evolution.
It's really interesting because I've actually not read a lot of strictly atheism books, because I found when I came out of religion and I became an atheist, I wasn't actually that interested in reading books that dealt with Christianity, because I was more interested in, my whole life I'd grown up believing that science was a lie, and that everything that people were telling me in school and everything was just wrong. So I came into this world where, oh my gosh, space is old, the universe is old, like climate change is a thing, evolution is a thing. So I mainly gravitated toward like science books and reading like philosophy and psychology and things that more dealt with reality.
Yeah.
Versus looking, okay, well, why do I not believe in Christianity? I was like, well, I just don't believe it, so I don't really care about like reading into it more.
I think that's probably why you were saying it was difficult to find a list, because sometimes you think, I've got a couple of books in there, for example, about James Randi, and you know how he talks about atheism, but he also talks about the magic trick and skepticism, right? Because they're so interconnected in a way that to just have a book on simple atheism itself is not always an easy thing.
Well, one of the books on atheism that I was surprised not to find, Hitchens is on here, but I found The Portable Atheist to be a really good one because it goes through it's atheist thought going back to the Greeks and then bringing it up to the future. So what would you put on there, Chris? Or Zach?
I'm personally not much of a reader. So.
Yeah, I'm not.
You know the best book to put on? The Holy Bible, guys. Read that book and, hey, you're an atheist now.
Yeah.
Haven't found that. Michael Roos actually has an interesting one. He's still an atheist, but he has one called Science and Spirituality. And he shows where he thinks that science definitely has proven itself over. But he also acknowledges where he thinks that there might be room beyond just looking at the science of things.
Well, the thing with science is that there's so much we don't know that you're always going to have gaps that you can insert religion into and be like, oh, well, we don't know when this happened, so we're saying, it's spiritual, it's God. But the only problem then it's like, oh, well, if we just assume it's God or spirituality, then we don't have to go look for it and find the actual naturalistic answer for it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's good list. It's a good one to stimulate your thought process and maybe add to your library or start to read if you haven't read any atheist books. So that's a fun one, and actually it turned out it's a nice coincidence with Chris and Zach.
I love how the Christian Chris, being a Christian, has read more atheist books than some atheists.
And all of us together.
That only surprises you because you don't know Chris as well as we do.
And somehow he's still a Christian.
Yeah.
He's stubborn. We'll get him on our side eventually.
That's right.
But now let's do a segment that we always love called Another Brilliant Moment.
Brought to you by religion.
I knew if I did it, she was going to get mad at me again.
Okay. Well, I don't want to offend you guys with these stories, but you just have to talk about
it. The fact is that this happens.
Yeah. Now, how often do you guys have to deal with demons?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
According to one Irish priest, the answer is all the time. He's requesting a backup in the form of more exorcists from the Catholic Church, citing a dramatic increase in demonic dilemmas.
Oh my.
This is Father Pat Collins. He wrote a letter urging bishops to train more priests to be exorcists so that the church can keep up with the demand.
It's so depressing how many people with actual mental disorders like schizophrenia or epilepsy, people are like, oh, you just have demons, so we're gonna tie you in a bed and chant over you. It's no, they need medication and professional mental help. Exorcism isn't a thing.
No, it's 2018, right? We need more exorcists.
The problem is a lot of these people are more likely to go to impoverished places where they still believe in believe in demons, and it's oh, you are you have Tourette's? Oh, well, we're just gonna exorcise you because that's obviously a demon, not a neurological disorder.
Did you guys ever see the
Where's this guy from?
Ireland.
He's from Ireland?
Yeah.
That impoverished nation.
Yeah. Did you guys ever see that video? Just do a sidebar here. That video of this happened in somewhere in Africa, and there's a black exorcist or some guy there, and he's exorcising this guy, and this guy's on the floor writhing in pain until his cell phone rings.
Oh my god!
Then he picks up his cell phone and just answers normally. Okay, all right, see ya. He hangs up his cell phone and then he continues writhing in pain as everybody's watching.
You'd think they would think, let's pause the video.
Well, I knew a couple in the U.S. that did marital counseling by exorcism. They felt that they truly felt with their fundamentalist church that if a married couple who married and who loved each other, that somehow they were possessed by demons, and if the demons left, that it would restore harmony in their marriage. So that's how they did marriage counseling.
Didn't we do a story a while ago about how there were people who thought the LGBT people were just possessed?
Oh yeah,
by
there's always a story like that.
Yeah.
There's always a story.
So I'm
going to throw a number. I'm going to throw a number out there with this story coming out and other events happening. I'm going to throw a number out, and then you guys can guess what that number's for. 2032.
2032.
Yep.
When the world gets taken over by demons?
Well, close. close.
Another end of the world thing.
We're gonna be burning witches at the stake again by 2032. I can see it
we
coming.
already
It's happening.
are burning witches at the stake.
Yeah.
No, I mean
Not here,
in
not
Western
America.
countries.
Oh, okay.
You're assuming there'll be enough trees left to do that.
Sorry, Nancy, I forgot. Yeah, we got to cut them all down.
So Colin said he was baffled that the bishops haven't trained more exorcists in Ireland, and added that anyone who doesn't see the need for more exorcists is out of touch with reality. Can't help. But there's one sentence I'm actually acknowledging that I am agreeing. He says, "What I'm finding out desperately is people who in their own mind believes, rightly or wrongly, that they're afflicted by an evil spirit." That's actually a true statement.
When you have a mental disorder such as schizophrenia, it's a common delusion to think that you are possessed by an evil spirit.
You're hearing the voices, right?
Yeah, that is a common delusion.
Colin said he acknowledges that some of the people falsely believe they're possessed by demons, which means that a rise in possession could actually be a rise in something else. Maybe mental illness or decline in treatment in said illness. In that case, then the last thing we need are more exorcists who would exacerbate the problem by fighting it.
Because the issue is when you tell people it's just the demons, they're less likely to take their medication.
Somehow I'm thinking that it should be, it's just schizophrenia, not, it's just the demons. That's just... I don't know. If I was infected by demons, I think that would be a pretty serious thing. Somehow.
Yeah. All right, another story. Now, over the years, there's a Christian hate pastor, Stephen Anderson. You ever heard of him?
I recognize the name. I
Yes.
forget exactly what brand of hate
He's an
peddles.
independent fundamental Baptist whose church operates without any oversight from a larger body. He said all sorts of over-the-top extreme things about gay people, especially. He celebrated the death of dozens of people at the Pulse nightclub. Remember that one? By saying the good news about the massacre is that there are 50 less pedophiles in the world.
Wow, he is
He's a piece, all right.
great person.
He also said the U.S. government should execute homosexual by the way of firing squad, because that's what the Bible commands.
Actually,
He's a real follower of Jesus, that
stoning
guy.
to death,
Yeah.
not firing squad.
Well, I guess firing squad is kind of stoning to death because you're hitting them with things, right?
True. But only if the bullets are made out of stone.
Well, his gleeful bigotry has frequently been a problem, though he attempts to visit foreign countries now to win over converts. But some countries are fighting back. He's been banned from Botswana, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and Canada.
Yes, go us.
And now you could just add Jamaica to that list.
Wow.
And Jamaica is not known as a bastion for gay people, though.
No, but some people are just a little too over the top with their gleeful,
with his hate, right?
Bigotry, right?
Yeah, the decision was made by the chief immigration officer because the pastor's statements are not conducive to the current climate, said spokesperson of the Ministry of National Security on Monday. The University of the West Indies, where Anderson was slated to speak, also rescinded the invitation.
Very good. Good on them.
And what's especially telling about this ban is that Jamaica, like I said, isn't some haven for LGBT rights. A man having sex with another man is a crime punishable by life imprisonment in Jamaica.
Holy crap, seriously?
Yes.
What about a woman having sex with a woman?
It doesn't say.
All these seem to really go after the men more so than the women.
It is. It really is. And then they watch women on women porn after that.
Yep.
Hate crimes against the LGBT people are incredibly high. The U.S. State Department said that homophobia was widespread in the country as recently as 2012. So how bad of a guy do you have to be for a country that's not really particularly nice to the LGBT to kick you out?
No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, you're too anti-gay for Jamaica at that point. So that's the good news about that. Well, thank you so much, guys, for that. Excellent. Let's move on. Okay. All right. We're not doing a commercial break today.
Lost the feed or what?
No, I just have to find the spot. Jeez. I'd like to see you do all that tech here while you're sitting there loftily.
I'm just watching your fingers pour over the keyboard, listening to you mutter to yourself. Where did I put it? Where is it?
Edit that in post. All right. So today we're going to have a conversation with our two Christian guests here. And I just, like I said, I want to repeat, no punches below the belt, no rabbit punches. When you come out in your corner, if I have to say that.
You're taking all the fun out of it.
What about above the neck?
Above the neck?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a punch to the face, I guess.
I'm trying. You know what? The funny thing is it really is. It really is so humorous. When have we not had a really good, civil, and interesting conversation with our guests?
That's true.
We love to have them back. We've known them for, I don't know, how long have we known you, Chris? Since 2014.
Yeah, since the Carrier Horner debate.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. You know, that's not fair because Kevin ties me up in the corner and won't let me talk. You get the right guest.
That was nice to the guest.
There is that.
Don't make me pull out the gag there, the ball gag for you.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll start the conversation maybe by letting these two gentlemen introduce themselves and how we know them and what they're doing as part, because Chris, especially you're studying all this. Zach, I'm not sure if you are too, but I'll let you guys introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, so I'm Chris. Nice to be back on Left at the Valley.
He says that now.
Yeah, okay, so we'll come back to that if I change my mind. But no, I've been going to Fraser Valley Atheists, Skeptics, and Humanists since 2014. That's how I got to know Kevin, plus arguing with him over Facebook on some of the group posts. Actually, I think I got to know him through that before I met him in person. Yeah, and then Kevin started inviting me on the show to do debates. I'm studying Christian apologetics. It means how to give a defense for your faith. It comes from the Greek word apologia. And yeah, I would like to look at books like Richard Dawkins' A God Delusion, Sam Harris' The End of Faith, Daniel Dennett, Breaking the Spell, look at what they're saying against Christianity and try to say, okay, this is an honest objection that they have. Is there a response that I could give that maybe would help them overcome that objection? Is there something maybe that I do need to seriously consider here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've found some areas that I'm really interested in now as a result. I particularly am interested in looking at ethics, at historicity of certain Christian truth claims, and yeah, just general epistemology.
And what was I about to say here? And last time you were on the show, you were actually debating our old friend Tyler about the history of Jesus, and you even came and debated another person about the history of Jesus, was Gemma Page. So this is like your third or fourth time on the show.
Yeah, third time.
Yeah, there we go. Cool. Zach.
Hey, I'm Zach, and unlike Chris, I'm not studying apologetics.
But he's got that sweet chin hair, man. He's got one sweet beard.
I did crop it off as about 3 inches longer than it is now.
Oh, really?
So,
well, I appreciate you making yourself pretty for us.
Well, you know, that was for the just girlfriend. Anybody.
Okay, Kevin, I don't know about your standards, but that doesn't equate to pretty to me. It's
he's a good-looking guy. Come on.
I'll take what I can get on that.
Call him pretty, and that, I'm sorry, he's just not pretty.
He's a handsome man.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
He's a handsome man.
But I appreciate the comments. Since our listeners can't see me, I guess I'll have to take your guys' word for it. But yeah, no, I work at a concrete block plant here locally in Abbotsford. I've done some studying at Trinity Western University, so I've had some Christian teaching at a university level. I wouldn't consider myself a scholar or an overly book-heavy reader person, but yeah, I'm a Christian. I love the challenge of my faith. I think that people should constantly be challenging the positions that they have. I quite enjoyed going to the Skeptics group a few times. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a drive for me now because I actually live in Langley, but I've enjoyed the discussion because I think people should always be challenging their personal views. I don't think that we should just get stuck in one spot and never at least challenge our views. So that's why I'm here.
Cool.
It's good to have you.
Yeah.
There's also a bit of a bromance developing between me and Zach here.
Aww. We could tell.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Good thing this is just a listening program.
We're live on Facebook right now, too.
Guys, get your hands. All right, get your hands off each other. All right? It's so in a PG show.
Rebecca would be jealous.
You're getting me all excited now.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay. I guess the first question we should ask, is of our Christian guests is, why are you a Christian? Why? Did you were always born and raised in Christianity? Why have you remained a Christian?
Well, I was born in a Christian home, but I don't know, I kind of went to church because my parents made me.
Yeah.
It wasn't really something that I was interested in particular. By the time I was 15, I pretty much was convinced that maybe God existed, but I actually thought I was the only person in the world who God hated. Because
really?
Yeah. It's interesting.
If God hates you, I don't have a chance.
You didn't know him at 15.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
Typical teenager, right? But no, I really didn't understand a lot about Christian doctrine. Like, it's amazing how much you can grow up in the church but not really learn anything. And so from what I understood, if you were a Christian, life was always going to be easy for you. And that, God loves you, so nothing bad ever happens. And it was a real problem for me, and it felt like a lot of the time I was just more and more depressed because it just felt like life kept getting worse. And it was actually only when I was 18 that somebody sat down and did some apologetic style stuff with me about suffering and about how that ties into Christian belief, that it finally actually overcame what my objections to Christianity were. So I didn't actually have a faith until I was 18.
Okay. Chris, did so that I understand what you're saying, did you feel that when bad things happened to you, it wasn't just a coincidence, it was because God was consciously abandoning you?
I don't know if it was... Yeah, it probably was a mix of that, but also maybe just that he wasn't stopping it. Like, I think... Wasn't it Bertrand Russell who kind of brought up the problem of evil? Like, if God's all good and all powerful, why doesn't he stop horrible things from happening to people that are trying to trust him, right? So that was my question, essentially.
So it was a more worldwide view than just you being abandoned or ignored as the only individual that he was not, that he didn't like.
Yeah, because I never really saw any of my other Christian friends talking about hard times that they were going through. It seemed like they always said, I put my faith in God and everything went really well. And so it was like, the few times that I tried, it felt like it usually just went the opposite route. And, it was somebody sitting down and saying like, no, hey, like I've gone through a crappy time before. He showed me a story of this woman who was down in South America doing missionary work with her husband. And her husband was a bush pilot who would go into the Amazon jungle and meet with the natives there. And what happened was, for a week, her husband was meeting with the tribe and bringing gifts to them and all this different stuff. But then one day her husband didn't come home. 2 days later, his body was found floating in the Amazon River with arrows all throughout him, and the 2 other pilots with him were killed as well. Well, she was, I think, 5 months pregnant, and she'd only been in the Amazon about 6 months. And so she was just feeling like, God, why did you call us down here just for this to happen? Well, fast forward 20 years, her son finds the tribe, finds the man that killed his father. He actually shares the gospel with them. The whole tribe converts. Now him and the guy that killed his dad tour around the world together, sharing their story. And it just gave me this perspective of, okay, yeah, crap happens. Actually, I can't find anywhere in the Bible that promises it won't now that I've read it. But it just showed me that, good things can come out of bad situations. And when I finally did reevaluate the things in my life that had been driving me away, I was like, no, I can actually see the purpose, the point behind it. It's not just meaningless suffering.
It's interesting because a lot of people... like you, when they start doubting and saying, maybe there isn't a God, they go from there to being more secular. But for you, what you're saying, it was more like the beginning. You began to question, but then you did the turnaround and really became, more a believer, in your faith than less. So that's interesting that, it's the exact opposite of most of the faith stories that we hear.
Yeah, faith through trials, yeah. How about yourself, Zach?
Well, I started out, like Chris, in a Christian home. My family were Christians. They took me to church, all of that. I would say that I was probably a little young to be thinking entirely with reason and logic, but at about 11 years old, I started thinking worldview, trying to figure out life. I watched my father, who's a farmer, and he works hard. He works more than your 8 hours a day. He doesn't get vacations, etc. And he works hard, and his life has been working for his family, working so other people can enjoy life. I grew up at 11 years old thinking I didn't want to go through all the suffering of work and have less enjoyment. Maybe a bad skewed view that I had of my family or my father, but I got to the point where it's like, well, I don't want to live if life is just work for, less pleasure than the work I put out. And at that point I was going through an existential crisis at 11 years old, and I came to the conclusion at that age that if there is no God, I'd rather just not live, because there's nothing that I can see at that point that I want to live for, that I could achieve. And pessimistic, I get it.
That took a turn for the dark real quick, didn't it?
Yeah, but that was okay. That's 11. At that age, I basically prayed to God, and I said, if you exist, then there must be some reason why I'm alive. If you don't exist, I'd rather just not go through it. It wasn't that life was terrible. I mean, I was a kid. I had all the luxuries of life handed to me. But that was the beginning of my understanding of God, because I felt like I felt like His presence was there with me. And I know that people say they've had that experience in other religions and other things, but that was my first experience with God. It was Him. Basically, I felt like He was there and telling me He was there. From there, I started to question who God was. Was it the God that I had gone to church and knew, or was it just a God that somehow or other had a different personality or whatever? And I went through a few years of kind of thinking and going through different religions and looking at how they viewed God, and came to sort of the conclusion that all of the religions were fairly similar, except for it was always your good deeds versus your bad deeds, except for Christianity, where actually, even if your bad deeds outweigh your good deeds, you still get to go to heaven. You just have to allow God's grace over your life. And so it sort of kind of threw me into this thing where I realized I often did what I did not want to do. I couldn't follow the law. I wasn't very good at that. And over the years as I got older, I've realized that I don't always do what I want to do. And it's not that I don't try to do what's good, it's just that I don't always do it. And that's kind of always been this, like, I know my bad deeds are going to outweigh my good deeds. I know that.
No, hold on a sec. That's very pessimistic. Why? I understand that bad deeds have more impact on the moment, right? We have a tendency to remember bad moments with much more impact. But if you actually did you ever do a calculation and actual
here's
good
how
deeds versus bad deeds?
Here's how I would view it, though. If I have a hard time thinking, if I punch you in the face right now, which I won't do,
you'd break my heart.
No, but
the bromance is over.
But if
it's just begun.
I didn't know you were into that, but if I punched you in the face, what would it take to actually?
You're making him uncomfortable.
This is okay. I'm getting uncomfortable. I don't know why you threw the comment out.
We didn't derail it this time.
This is a first. We've never had a budding bromance.
I don't know. The last time I was here, I thought me and Kevin had something. But
we always have something.
Congratulations, guys. I mean.
Back to the question. Like I was saying, do you really think that if you were to do a tally, although it'd be pretty much impossible, I have a hard time thinking that in Zach's life there'd be more bad situations and bad actions than good ones.
Well, if you look at the weight of it, if I punched you in the face versus buying you a chocolate, okay, how many chocolates do I got to buy you to actually cover the damage done by punching you in the face? And yes, that's a simple little thing, but you go so far as to say, I steal something from you. What does it actually take to then build trust? What does it take to outdo the bad with good? It always takes a lot more good to outweigh the bad.
No, I think it really depends on the condition. For example, you steal from me, it really depends. If you open my wallet, take out my money, and run out the door, that's theft. But if you happen to pick up my pen and put it in your pocket inadvertently, you still stole from me, but it's a completely different type of theft. And you come back to me and say, "Oh, Kev, I'm so sorry, I grabbed your book by mistake, here it's back." It's not going to take anything. It's just going to take you giving me the book back for me to say, "Hey, no problem, Zach, don't worry about it."
Well, that's, again, there's scope for sure, but in your mind, if you saw me take something out of your house and I didn't say anything and I never said anything, what would it take for the good that I do to actually outweigh that bad?
Like I said, it depends on the intent, right? If you actually decide to steal my laptop, you have the intent of taking that laptop and running away with it, and because I have been victim of theft, I understand that. It would take a lot for me to trust you, absolutely. But there are different levels of... I really doubt that in your life, from what I know of you, although we're new bromance and all that, but I mean, from what I know of you, I really have a hard time thinking that Zach is one who purposely, on a regular basis, does bad things.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah,
I just have a question. So in your looking at good deeds versus bad deeds, do you look at it as the repercussions those deeds will have, or what your God looks at as those deeds? Because like in the Bible, it's like one of like the things you're not supposed to do is like lie. But there are some lies that have exponentially good result from them. But there's some lies that will have terrible things that happen. So like in that, do you look at the results versus the action?
Well, I think here's where I'm gonna go back to something Kevin said, and I kind of skipped over it. I didn't see it as the point of the conversation quite yet, but it is, and that goes to intent. I think that, first of all, when we're talking about good deeds and bad deeds, I am going back to a biblical standard, and biblically speaking, sin isn't necessarily the action, but it's the heart. If my intention is to hurt you, that's a heart thing, and maybe what I do doesn't even hurt you, it's still wrong. If my intentions are to do something good and it does hurt you, well, that's not actually sin. That's not actually a bad deed.
But what if you have someone who like thinks, because you have mothers that their intention is to like save their children from hell, so they'll murder their children in the intention to save them the possibility of like committing sin, so because they want their children to go to heaven, like their intent is good, but then they're still committing a sin.
What I would say the sin would be is that they are not putting their heart into trusting God, and
but in that's their children, their children's possibility of either rejecting a God or like giving their life to them. That's not on God, that's on their children. So it's more they wouldn't be trusting their children.
Right, but they're also trusting that they're not... Like, a biblical story is Abraham goes into Egypt with his wife, and he lies to Pharaoh, saying that this is his sister, not his wife. Yeah. Because he is afraid that...
they'll kill him and take his wife.
Exactly. But God chastises him for not trusting that God would protect both of them. The sin there wasn't the lie necessarily, because the lie was meant to protect. The sin was that that Abraham was not trusting God. That's the sin. That's why it's wrong. The action was wrong, but the why is different than maybe you thought.
I don't know. Sounds like a big judgment on God's part for something that everybody would do very easily, especially in the presence of a harsh military dictator like a pharaoh.
So when you are debating a particular action as to whether or not that action is good or bad, do you go through a mental process of saying, what would God want me to do? And then make the decision, I'll do this because according to what I know about God, this is the right thing to do versus the bad thing to do? Or do you assume any personal responsibility in making that choice?
Well, this all kind of stems from the idea of Christianity as a relationship. God has given the Old Testament, and the Old Testament shows a bunch of laws and decrees and things you have to do and not do. And I would say, from my understanding of Christianity, the Old Testament is actually God putting his heart on display and saying, this is a list of things that I like, and I hope you pursue the good things. If you pursue the good things, we can have a relationship. If you pursue the bad things, your heart is against me. And to that degree, it's kind of like if you have a couple, a man and a wife, and sorry, I'm going very specific with a man and a wife because that's from the Bible. You know? But you have your man, and he's going to his wife, and she gives him a list of things she likes and doesn't like, and he does all the things on that list she doesn't like. How long are they going to be together?
But the difference is in this, we're talking about in extrapolating that to God and humanity, that wife would then burn her husband for eternity. Like there is a difference with what the God.
Okay, you're jumping to the bigger scope, obviously, and that's fair. Basically, if from that perspective, you also have to realize that I come from a point where God created all that is, and if God created, he also can destroy. Why can't he?
Okay, Chris, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think people are inherently sinful or inherently good?
Inherently sinful.
Really? What brought you to that conclusion?
The
hanging around us.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything.
I can read your mind.
I mean, short answer, it seems to be what the Bible teaches, and I've got reasons that I trust the Bible, hence I would trust what it says that way. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe is there?
I mean, has that really been your experience in your life? Have you ever thought that, that most of us are sinful? Or
can we quickly, before we jump into that, define what sin is?
That's an excellent question because I never get a proper answer to that. Well, please give me your definition of sin.
Well, sin literally comes from an archery term, and it means when the archer would fire his arrow, if he missed the target, it meant that he missed, or if he missed the target, that would be called sinning. So if you think about God's law or commands as a target, sinning would be missing that mark. So if you've lied, if you've cheated on your spouse,
So sinning is something that displeases God.
Yeah.
Okay. To take that just quickly into the analogy I was kind of building before, sin is when your heart is against God. It's basically when you're intentional about going in a direction other than the direction God wants you to go.
Okay. And you gentlemen feel, I don't know if Zach, you feel the same way as Chris there, but you guys feel that the average Joe, me, Nancy, whoever, the guy across the street, the guy next door and all that, are inherently more sinful than good.
Can I share an example? I was having a conversation with an atheist at swing dancing, and he was trying to convince me that he was not inherently sinful.
Uh-huh.
And one of his points was, I follow the 10 Commandments. Can anybody here tell me why an atheist might not be able to actually say they don't follow the 10 Commandments?
Sorry, so if somebody can tell you if the atheist can do what?
Can't follow all of the 10 Commandments.
Well,
they can't because
there's the God part in there.
Exactly,
you
right?
have to believe in God.
Yeah,
exactly. And in the Bible, belief in God or non-belief in God is considered a sin. So even if we're just going down to the bare basics of the fact that not everybody does believe in the Christian God, that would be a sin.
Okay. So staying on the sin there and going back to what Zach was saying, are there different levels of sinning? I mean, is belief, and are they all on the same level? For example, is killing the same thing as not believing in God? Or is believing in God a lesser sin than killing, for example? And if so, how do you repair, like you were saying, how do you rebuild that trust?
What I would say to that is there's if it comes back to the heart again, if your heart is against something, for instance, if you I don't know how to make an analogy for this off the top of my head, but for the idea that there's different levels would come from how much you go against it, really. If your heart is negative towards something, you're going to... how your actions actually don't make the difference.
I understand that.
So, are there different levels of how much you want to turn and go away from God? Well, the heart of it really would be the same, I think.
Well, let's take the sin of not believing here, because we're talking about that, right? I don't think you can talk to any of the atheists here in this room and say, are you against God? That's not the case. We're actually quite neutral about the idea. We're just not believing in the existence of it. And I think that's one of the problems a lot of Christians have. They look at atheists as rebelling against something they know. No, it's just they're not convinced there is such a thing. There's a huge difference. I mean, if Jesus was to walk in right now and transforms the nachos into loaves and fishes and all that, I'd be the first one to say, oh, geez, there he is. He's on my bad.
It wouldn't even need that. It would just need evidence that can follow the scientific method, because the thing is, you have to be able to see, because the problem with some people who are like, oh, well, I have an experience with God. You have to be able to prove it outside of yourself.
Yeah,
you can't just be like, oh, I had this experience. I understand it. If you can't prove it.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
If the miraculous is the proof of the divine, how does science ever prove a miracle?
Well, my question would be, is when you look back through history, there have been so many things that have been divine miracles, have been attributed to demonic intervention, that through science we have been able to show what it actually is. And my question would be, where is that line that science in 1,000 years will be able to still not reach?
There's a fundamental problem when you talk about going back into history to prove that miracles weren't miracles. And the reason is because in historicity, the most probable is what gets counted as the most historically accurate. Miracles, by definition, are not probable. And because they are not probable, history doesn't say that they happened, because our historic method involves, like I said, it's the things that are the most probable. So if you look at something that happened in history and the historical evidence around it, and we had the discussion about the resurrection regarding basically this material, and the information around the resurrection, it doesn't seem that there's another probable explanation other than a resurrection.
Well, but I would
going to any miracle to say let's say yesterday I had my leg healed. Okay, it was broken and it got healed miraculously. For you to use science to disprove that would be impossible. Impossible, unless you had science somehow proving that my leg's broken.
Well, in that instance, I would require you to prove that it happened. I would be like, okay, I want your, like, the X-ray of it broken, and the next day you're going back and it's fixed now.
I think you're talking past each other here, because, Zach, if I can show through science that something is possible, and you describe a miracle that fits those conditions, then I can, with that possibility, I can say, his little miracle could have happened, but it didn't have to be a miracle. Take the burning bush. The burning bush is one of the big... that burning bushes don't just appear. Well, apparently there is a bush that will spontaneously combust in that region. Well, guess what? You just showed evidence, because you have modern evidence that says that is a possibility, that somebody could have seen this.
There could have been something to the story.
There could have been something to that story. So saying that you can't reproduce the miracle itself doesn't mean that the miracle didn't occur, or that there's not a scientific basis behind it.
Well, I think what Scott is trying to say here, just before, sorry Chris, I'm interrupting you here, is Scott is not doubting your experience. He's questioning your conclusion of it.
Oh, yeah, that definitely, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Chris.
Question and a comment. So, Scott, with that bush that spontaneously combusts, is there anything left of it after it combusts?
I don't know. I haven't read that far into the...
Okay, because, see, it's not just like the... just a little bit of exegesis here. But it's not just the fact that the bush was on fire that made Moses go, oh my gosh, a bush is on fire. He didn't actually see it combust. There wasn't anything to do with that. He came upon it and he said, it's not burning up. That's what amazed him. He knew that bushes could catch on fire. He knew that bushes burn. He lived in a desert. The chances are he's seen more than one fire. It was that he was realizing, well, shoot, they usually don't stay in one piece after they catch fire.
Don't know the conditions. Don't know what the actual end game was there. I don't know.
No,
but they've found that a burning bush is not impossible.
That's fair.
Okay.
But the thing I'd be interested is if they found one that stays intact.
I don't know. I haven't read that far.
Also, you have to argue that the story as it's told, which has been retold and recopied many times, might not be the original story.
Exactly.
Either.
I'll grant you that for this, but my point with it is that, and I think this touches on what you were asking, there's a difference between God of the gaps arguments and the miracles that we're talking about. C.S. Lewis said that Christianity is actually one of the few religions that are actually there. It revolves around our miracles. Not many others are actually based on the miracles that they claim. Now, God of the gaps would be saying, oh, there's wind. God's breathing. It's a miracle. That's the sort of stuff that science has disproved, I'll admit. But see, there's a difference between what that would be called pantheism. Pantheism, where God is literally part of the creation.
I think pantheism is when there's multiple deities.
No, that's polytheism.
Oh, you're right. You're totally right. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's not the type of God that we believe in. We believe in a God that transcends. So he put the created order in place, but he is not the created order. So therefore, we're not looking for God specifically to explain, for like breath for wind or his shoulders holding up the earth, whatever. We're talking about...
He set things in motion, then he stepped back.
Yeah, and we still believe he controls the things, but I mean, a transcendent being, you wouldn't necessarily...
How does he control these things? Does he use some kind of technology, or is it simply something you can reduce it to magic?
His power, I guess, yeah. If you want to call it magic.
How would you describe that power?
Powerful.
Well, yeah.
No, I don't know, man. Like, I think about, for example, the best example I can use is you have a computer, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's say you built that computer.
Yeah.
You can manipulate it. You could modify it. Because you know it so well. You designed it.
Yeah.
You can control it and do it with it whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. With the exception of maybe DNA samples or whatnot, if I was to look into that computer, I would not actually find you in that computer.
No.
Because you're outside of it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you have no control over it.
No. Yeah, I understand what you're saying here, but that wasn't really my question. My question is, if I'm building this computer, I'm using physical tools to assemble physical materials and throw an electric current. I'm just wondering, how does God manipulate things?
I don't know.
Okay. That's fair. That's a fair answer. Mm-hmm. It's a fair answer. It's an honest answer.
Mm-hmm. But a question going back to talking about miracles that I was curious, because you were saying, like, looking in history and through like through the Bible, and like they say that there was these miracles performed, would you look at the same thing in other cultures where they also say miracles were performed, such as like you look at Druids or Chinese like religions, and where they have similar things
Hinduism
happen? Would you not have to then grant them the same weight as you do your own religion?
Miracles in other religions would not disprove Christianity. There's examples in the Bible of God doing miracles with non-believers. Like you look at the story of Naaman, who was healed of leprosy.
I think what Christianity is asking is, Christianity says there is only one God. If you accept miracles in other religion, that kind of disproves Christianity's claim that only being one God is not.
But the other thing is, so it could be the actual God doing it and people misunderstanding it. Or two, we also believe in spirits that can do counterfeit signs, can do counterfeit miracles. So there's that option.
Like bad spirits? Like demons kind of thing?
Demons, yeah.
Okay.
There's also times where, like, for example, Muhammad, he was supposed to have split the moon. We obviously know that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of disconfirming evidence, too, for a lot of these miracles.
Well, and then there's also a lot of times where we can look at, like Scott was saying, about we can look at what they said happened, and we can match it up with things that we can do scientifically now with different like say there's like they in the history that's like they made this explosion and with lots of light and sound, and we could now go and reproduce that same thing with science through using chemical reactions. Would you not look at that and be like, oh well, we can prove that scientifically now, and oh, it's probably they just used the science versus it was a spirit?
Well, it depends, I guess. Like, for example, with the resurrection, I won't launch into my full argument there.
No, we don't have time for that.
That's the next show closer to Easter.
Yeah. That'd be awesome to do again. But no, like, as far as I understand, scientifically, we know people don't come back to life.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's never happened. Well, like, there's never been a provable time that it's happened.
But I would actually argue...
And I should say that, and we're talking about like 3 or like a day and a half with how long the Bible says Jesus was dead for.
Right. But like, at least as far as I can tell, there is a lot of evidence that actually points to it having happened. And the resurrection was, for Christians, the foundational event of our beliefs.
Yeah.
So if it happened...
Yeah, because that's when Christianity branched off from Judaism.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, what would have to happen, or what evidence would there have to be for you to start to doubt that Christianity is true?
That's a good question.
It just doesn't.
What would it take to change
What would
your
it
position?
take? What would it take for you to suddenly start to think, well, maybe my belief is falsifiable?
For example, if Richard Carrier was actually proven to be right and Jesus didn't exist.
And what would that take? What evidence would there... I mean, is there anything specific that would...
Jesus' mummy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for the sake of argument, if he was a historical person, actually finding his body and being able to verify that it's there, that would be a defeater for my beliefs, because that would mean that he stayed dead, he wasn't vindicated.
But then couldn't
most Christians
just make...
Yeah.
I'm curious, if say you found the physical body of Jesus Christ, couldn't you just then say that, oh, well, when he rose to heaven, he left his body and his spirit ascended?
That would...
Like, couldn't you just kind of work it into
Some people
your
would do that.
belief system?
Absolutely.
See, the problem is that I understand what you mean with that, but it wouldn't be an actual resurrection the way that Christians and Jews meant it.
Well, no, what I mean is he could have resurrected, but then when his soul have separated from his body and left his body, and then they could have like mummified it.
She's got a very good point. Christianity has a history of being very malleable in that sense. I mean, for the longest time, Genesis was literal until we realized that it can possibly be literal. Now it's a metaphor.
Well, I mean, we look at something like evolution, and as the science starts to come out, people start talking about it, and then it's almost as like the 6-day creationists didn't even have to voice themselves until evolution came out, because before that, that's all anybody ever knew.
Yeah, exactly.
But Chris has a quote. Who's that? Saint Augustine, and it's actually
that guy again.
kind of predating the idea of evolution and saying that actually, hold on a second, we as Christians aren't using the Bible as a science textbook. That's before this craze of evolution came out, and before Christians had to try and work with the science that's coming out today. There were already Christians who were going, hold on a second, this is never meant to be a science textbook.
So do you believe in are you an evolutionist?
Honestly, I'm not a scientist, and though people ask me my beliefs on evolution versus creationism, I grew up believing firmly in the idea of 6-day creation. I have seen a lot of science that has made me question that, but I've also seen things in the science that I've questioned without having feeling like I've had a satisfactory answer for some of those things.
Oh, really?
Really?
At the moment,
yep.
And I'll gladly share some of those.
Sure.
At the moment, I would say I'm somewhat undecided on the idea of whether it's evolution or 6-day creation. I'm not taking a hard stance on either side.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm totally open to learn, and I've been talked to by Christian evolutionists, and I've been talked to by Christian 6-day creationists. I've been talked to by atheist evolutionists, and I've even met an atheist non-evolutionist. And basically, I just haven't got enough science knowledge to figure some of these things out.
That's totally understandable.
So there isn't anything specific that would bring you over to your belief in evolution at this point. You just haven't put all the science together to make that way more than the faith that you have.
That's probably a fair.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Zach,
that's good.
Zach, your viewpoint on this is actually technically awesome, because you're a skeptic at heart.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is I don't have the knowledge or definitive evidence to say one thing or another.
I can feel another romance going.
I'm starting to fall in love with you, my friend. Stop crying over there, Christine. I saw that.
That wasn't a cry. That was a face palm.
I think I'm blushing a little bit here. But
guys, he's never going to come back.
That
You're
is an
scaring
awesome.
him.
You see, because you have an opportunity to learn and show the rest of us up, because I formed my opinions. I'm stuck in my line of thinking. I call myself a skeptic, but I'm not.
See, for me with evolution, I've just read a lot about it.
You're looking at what's in front of you and going, I don't know. I got to learn more, and that is so awesome.
Chris, as for example, used to be a Christianist, right?
Did you say Christian or creationist?
Christian. Oh, you're not a Christian anymore.
No, but you used,
newsflash.
You used to believe in 6-day creation, did you not?
Yes.
And now, of course, right now you've changed your mind. You accept evolution.
Yeah.
And I congratulate you for that, sir. And for me, I mean, it was always very simple, because the Human Genome Project, which I'm quite sure you guys are familiar with, which was, of course, headed by Francis Collins, which actually turns out to be a Christian, proved. Is it 2001, Scott, or 2011?
I thought it was 2001, but.
Could be. Okay, maybe it's 2011. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
2011.
Doesn't matter. The DNA proves in our system, in our chromosomes, the DNA proves there was never such a thing as 2 human beings on the planet. The lowest number of
I think it was like 13,000?
Somewhere between 13 and 20,000. Yeah. We actually came very close to extinction ourselves as a species. Yes. And the DNA actually proves that. So that to me, right there, relegates Adam and Eve to metaphor at best. Yeah. At best, right? And of course, it causes another problem, because if there was no Adam and Eve, there was no original sin. There was no original sin. Then what was Jesus coming here for?
Sorry.
Feel free to answer that if you want.
Just so the listeners can understand, we all just kind of turned our head to
Chris. So, can I read a quote that Zach?
You're not going to quote St. Augustine or?
Yes.
Yeah,
of course he is.
I think you guys might actually like what he's saying, though. So,
Okay.
It says, a non-Christian knows something about the earth, the heavens, and other elements of this world, about the motion and orbit of the stars, and even their size and relative positions, about the predictable eclipses of the sun and moon, the cycles of the years and seasons, about the kinds of animals, shrubs, stones, and so forth. And this knowledge he holds to as being certain from reason and experience. Now, it is a disgraceful and a dangerous thing for a non-Christian to hear a Christian, presumably giving the meaning of Holy Scripture, talking nonsense on these subjects. The shame is not so much that an ignorant individual, the Christian, is derided, but that people outside the household of the faith think of our sacred writers holding such positions. So, I think that's a pretty good tie-in to this whole creation-evolution debate. Obviously, Augustine knew there was things about the Bible that were not scientifically accurate, and even six-day creationists know that, because in the same chapter you've got of Genesis that teaches six-day creation.
I'll jump in here though. Not all six-day creationists, because my parents think it is totally scientifically accurate. They're crazy though, so that's an example.
If you've ever listened to the show, you've heard that many, many times.
Fair enough, but even then, you look at what they do. Then, if they come across something that's obviously been falsified by science, like a flat Earth or a dome, then what they do is they actually start reinterpreting those verses to mean something else. Yes. Or they'll say, well, that's obviously allegorical. But then they've contradicted themselves, because they've said you have to take Genesis 1 literally, except we don't have to take it literally because this is obviously false. I actually have more respect logically for flat earthers and solid sky people, because they're willing to take their conclusions all the way through.
But then wouldn't they also have to be stoning gays and burning witches?
What, flat earthers?
Well, if he's saying like you have more respect for
the
people
literal
who
Christians
take it all literally.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question.
Do you guys still want an answer on the Adam and Eve thing?
Okay, sure.
So, at least the view that I hold of Genesis, it's called the archetypal view. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at Genesis 1, the word that's used is Adam, but it's not used as a personal name for a person like Adam and Eve at that point. It's just the Hebrew word for humanity. So all it says is that humanity was created in Genesis 1. Now, there's a guy named John Walton.
Hold on, pause. When did that view come into into popular culture? When did that view originate?
About the Hebrew word?
No, about the Adam meaning humanity.
Well, that's just what the Hebrew word actually means.
No, but I mean, the fact that you have adopted that view is not a view that came out in the 1300s.
Well, the thing is, it might have been the original view, but then it changed to mean a singular person, Adam and Eve.
I just want to find out if this view of the archetypal Adam, like you say, is something that came out after evolution.
Science said, "Oh, well, that could happen."
As a response to the new science.
Just technically, the six-day creationist view is a very new view. It's started in about whenever the real Christian fundamentalism started, and that was mostly a response to liberalism. But even Ken Ham's thing, as much as he'd want you to believe it, is not even the oldest interpretation.
He who shall not be named.
Sorry.
Well,
That's okay.
I think, Christine, you said it right when you said it could have actually been the original meaning, and it was the original meaning of the word, which means that it could have been what the church understood for the first 1,000 years.
But we don't know that.
No, but we also don't know that they interpreted it the way we do now.
Yeah.
Well, it's like if you, I'm gonna refer back to a previous episode we've done. Around Halloween, we did an episode about Satan and the different words meaning different things in the original
El Satan meaning the adversary.
Whereas if you look at those original words, they didn't actually mean what we what today Christians interpret them as. They were never actually referring to like a specific person.
That was one of my favorite episodes.
I know, that was
love
amazing.
That
so guys, go listen to it.
That was our Halloween special.
But to tie into your question, what this is based on is stuff that we've discovered about the ancient Near East, about the thought patterns and stuff. And one of the things they have noticed is that in almost no ancient Near Eastern cosmology is ever there been an idea of just two humans. Usually it's an idea of like a whole group of people being created. And since the ancient Israelites did grow out of an ancient Near Eastern culture, it's a safe bet anthropologically that they probably had some of the same worldviews. Just like they shared the worldview of like the solid sky, just like they shared the worldview of flat Earth.
I'm just going to jump in here for a second. So talking about if Adam never referred to one person or two people, and it's referring to humanity. If you look at evolution, because the thing is with our human evolution, there was never one person that started humanity. Like, it was a very slow process, and it was a million small steps.
Yeah.
So it was never, well, this is when humanity started. You can look at, okay, well, this is when we started using what we can kind of think as words to communicate.
Yeah,
and this is when
is the closest
we started like drawing, or like we might have like used lines in the sand, or like, so there's only very small steps. So like, when in your belief, referring back to like the original sin, would that humanity have started?
Whenever God took that group of people and put his image into them, because that's where it seems to be like the real defining moment in Genesis, is he made them in his image. So whether that means that he took whatever form of Homo sapien was around and gave them this thing that makes them distinctively human.
But then you can also look, there was civilized, like there was humanity before like Homo sapiens, and there's off branches of what is a Homo sapien that still had like culture, like they had.
Are you saying that God is anthropomorphic? Is he actually have physical traits?
No,
because when you say in his image, what exactly do you mean?
Do you want to take this one, Zach?
Well, to be quite fair here. On this topic, Chris has actually been the one to educate me, so me talking is kind of counterproductive, but I'll give it a shot here.
Just give me a break for a second.
and can I just jump in here? Like, when we're asking the questions, we're not trying to like trip you guys up. We're genuinely curious, like what you believe.
And that's fair. And this is something that, as I've kind of trying to wrap my own head around things like evolution and the way things began. At least the theory that Chris proposed. What was the name of the book?
Oh, Lost World of Adam and Eve by John Walton.
Okay, in that book, Chris kind of gave me a summarize, because I don't read a whole lot. I'm too social for that, apparently. But,
what are you saying?
We'll skip that. No, giving kind of a synopsis of it. There were people living. And God entered and said, okay, these people are going to be bearing my consciousness to some degree. The whole idea of who God is, in having an understanding that is sort of beyond instinct.
Okay, so God, if I understand what you're saying here, God came in and basically said, Homo sapiens is going to be bearing my blessings, it's going to be my chosen people in a way.
Yeah.
Right. So he chose Homo sapien over Homo neanderthalis.
Yeah.
So and
what makes the difference between sapiens and Neanderthals? Is it for you guys as far as you're concerned? What is the God difference that we have between these two species of humans?
I'd actually have to look into that one. As far as I understood, though, the what we are seems to be the most advanced out of.
Oh yeah, I mean
all of them.
we were slightly, and I mean very slightly more intelligent.
But then you also look at there's a lot of humans that have Neanderthal genes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All the Caucasians, yeah.
Okay, so coming from the absolute stupid point of view, and I'm really good at that. If God infused Homo sapiens with divine consciousness, how can you have the divine consciousness and yet be born in sin at the same time? That I really...
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out too, right? I mean, the Neanderthals were conscious as well. I mean, they had learned language as well. They had very in just about all similar points. They were physically a bit different, maybe a bit slower than us mentally. So I'm just saying, is that difference in intelligence what that God connection is?
Well, my point is that if God decided that sapiens is it, they're the chosen people, how could he give them this wonderful spiritual infusion, and you turn around and say, yeah, but you got an original sin at the same time? I have a hard time grasping how that works.
I'm having a hard time grasping the whole Homo sapien thing, because I always thought that God was the God of the Israelites.
Oh,
The
that's
Israelites
later.
were the chosen people of all of humanity.
That's later. We're the chosen species, and then the chosen people in the species.
Yeah, he's very selective.
I'm
Being there at the same time, I can verify.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
Oh, forgot about that.
Yeah.
So let's move
Yeah, she was
on
actually
to
there.
what Nancy was saying about sin, and then let's take the fable of Genesis there and the Garden of Eden and all that. This might sound like a very silly question, but I never actually got a good answer to this. What was the purpose of the tree of knowledge? Why would God, which is according to your definition, was be an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, right? And why would the purpose of a tree of knowledge be? Does he need to eat a fruit once in a while?
But then it's also, do you guys believe in an actual tree of knowledge?
Yes.
I've seen it.
So he's got a tree of knowledge.
It's an
but he
Apple
knows
computer.
everything already. Does he need to eat a piece of the fruit once in a while?
No.
So why would he create such a tree?
Well, in the whole idea of the fact that God is a loving God, he wants us to have a relationship. If there were no choices, we would be robots.
Wait, can I just jump in here for a second? So you said you believe in an actual tree of knowledge.
And tree of life.
So do you then believe in like the Garden of Eden?
Yes.
So in the Garden of Eden there was an Adam and Eve.
Yes.
So do you believe in an Adam and Eve, two people?
Yes.
In a Garden of Eden that are secluded away from everyone else?
This is can I have like a minute to try to summarize what I think on this one?
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Okay, so like I said, I do believe that humanity was created as a group. Whatever way the image of God works, I can't give like a very good, thorough definition right now. That one important point to make there is, from what we can tell of Genesis, it follows the way that it's described that God creates the cosmos is the way that temples used to be built in the ancient Near East. And the very last thing that got put into the temple in the inner sanctuary was the image of the deity that the temple was built for. What was the last thing that was put onto earth during Genesis 1? It was man made in the image of God. So, next you get the Garden of Eden, which seems to be the inner sanctuary of the temple cosmos. And that's where he puts Adam and Eve in. Now, what I believe that they were, and this is where the archetype thing comes in, is they were priests to God on behalf of the rest of humanity. And so
that's a bit of a jump, no? That's a hell of a jump to make that assumption.
I think I'm with Kevin on this one.
Hold on, before you're understanding that, like this is the viewpoint of evolution and the Bible, and how there's an understanding of how they work together, and this would be the idea that there were people already there.
Yeah.
God chose to put his spirit into a specific
couple,
and all of that lines up with Genesis 1.
Okay.
And it doesn't go against evolution at all. This idea that now there's this couple that have the Spirit of God, and like Chris was saying, they are in the manner that temples were built. And the last thing put into the temple was the image of their God. This would be the same idea that God put His image into the earth.
Yeah.
And I don't see why that would be a jump, that they would be like the priest and priestess of this temple.
No, I mean, I'm just saying it's an interpretation at this point. It's not something that's specified in the Bible in any way, shape, or form, right?
No, but it does follow archetypal other literature from the ancient Near East. Like a lot of this stuff is based on what we see as the general idea, and then the biblical author taking some of those ideas but reshaping them.
Yeah.
So
although it's hardly a new idea, I mean, any culture that's built temples, nobody starts with putting the deity and then building the temple around it.
Yeah.
They always start by building the temple and then finishing with the statue inside.
Except for the Ark of the Covenant.
So it's hardly a Jewish or a Hebrew invention to build a temple like that. And
I'm not arguing that it is. I'm just saying that this is why we can make these sort of deductions as we look at what the general thought process was what the worldview of it was, and archetypes that acted on behalf of the rest of humanity was also something common in ancient Near Eastern thought. So now, one of the things that I believe Genesis is about God creating the world, but then putting humans in place, starting at the Garden of Eden, and from there working outwards to bring order to the rest of chaos, because that is what a lot of ancient Near Eastern cosmologies are about.
Question. So with the Garden of Eden, when do you think that happened?
I have not thought about that part.
Because like, if you look at the young Earth creationists, they think the Earth is like 6,400 years old.
Yeah, that was based on the calculation
because you
going
calculate
back,
the ages of generations and stuff. So do you think that happened 6,000 years ago?
No.
Okay, so you don't think like doing the ages and calculating the ages gives you an accurate? He said
he's not a young Earth creationist right there. So.
Well, no, I'm just trying to figure out because you have civilizations like the Egyptian civilization and the South American, it's like 10,000 years old. So I'm just trying to figure out when that Garden of Eden happened, that the original sin and then the events of the Bible then followed.
Yeah, okay, so to be honest, genealogies and that I have not studied enough on. Age of the Earth, not something that I've really looked into.
Well, this isn't Age of the Earth. This is age of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, and so how...
Better than Age of Ultron.
Well, Chris, being that you are really open-minded, that you believe in evolution, that brings up an interesting question to me in that when Christina brings this up about when do you think this happened and you haven't gone into it, is that an intellectual curiosity with you at this point to try and figure out how the age of the Earth and all of those things, and then try to line it up with the creation story?
Yeah, I think that's the next step. I mean, I'm very much a systematic thinker.
Yeah, you are.
I try to focus on one question that I'm answering.
Yeah.
And then once I feel like I've got that down enough that I can explain it, then I try to move on to the next part. Like this thing on Genesis, this has been like a 2 or 3 year study, just looking at the first 3 chapters. I know the guy whose theology I kind of accept, or theological outlook I accept, has done work on the genealogies and how that all works together too. So that's my next point. But
yeah, I think that would be, now of course I'm trying to run your life here, but I really think that would give you a depth of knowledge, to be able to combine the two, because I think your mind is open enough and you're intelligent enough to be able to make whatever connections that are there. I don't know how, speaking for myself, I don't know how that would affect your faith one way or the other. It probably, knowing you, would strengthen it. But I would love to see you pursue that, and because I think it would be a great thing for you to do for your own personal growth.
I agree.
I have this question because I hear this from people who leave the faith a lot. That one of the main reasons, I think, Christine, you even mentioned it, one of the main reasons why people leave Christianity is because of the science that is taught. In light of the idea that there's a possibility that the science that is taught is accurate and the Bible is accurate, does that change your perspective of Christianity, or is your Christianity now have other reasons why you also don't believe?
For me, like, the science in the Bible wasn't the only reason that I didn't believe in the Bible, because, like, I think, like, the God of Christianity is just a generally horrible being because of the acts this being has committed upon humanity. But the science in the Bible is a glaring thing that if a being was all-knowing, should have been able to get over and, like, been like, okay, well, the Earth's obviously not flat, so you shouldn't write that in your book.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you shouldn't, like, this person is writhing on the floor. They aren't infected by a demon. They probably have epilepsy.
Yeah, if Jesus was the Son of God, how come he didn't know about a fig tree being in season? Or why didn't he invent the printing press?
Or know that
to spread his word?
Or know that the whatever seed, I forget what it's called, is not the smallest
why does
seed.
Why does everything that happened in the Bible happen in that little very small patch of land in the Mediterranean? I mean, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about what goes on in China or anything like that.
Is that all not your guys' understanding of the world now put onto something that happened in the past, and not actually, like, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, okay, so you have,
but it's also looking at the Bible and looking at it, well, this is a book written by people in this time, this is their understanding of the world, and looking at it, these are people who are living in warring nations, and they're, because in the early Testament, the God of the Bible is very, let's go conquer our enemies, very, it fits with what those people would most likely
The book is
be.
all too human to be divinely inspired. I mean, I could write a better book than the Bible. It's very, and I can actually prove it. All I'd have to do is rewrite the Bible word for word and add "Thou shalt not rape kids," and it's
or no, just "Thou shalt not rape."
Yeah, and
or
that's,
own other
and it's arguably a better book. If it was divinely inspired, I shouldn't be able to do that.
The interesting thing is, I think Zach's question comes up, are we not looking at this from our worldview now? Well, that is exactly why the question arises. We know that there were civilizations in China and in India over 2,000 years ago, over 4,000 years ago, and yet they didn't come to the same... This Bible was only in that one little tiny area in a great big world that had many peoples on it.
As a matter of fact, when Christianity was introduced to the Chinese, that was one of the first questions they said. Well, why didn't Jesus come here? And it's a valid question. It's an actually valid question.
So now that we know, we actually have to ask that question. Like, okay, so where did this... where did it come from?
And we also have to look at it like this. If you're looking at the Bible as a God who is throughout all time, why didn't he bring the better humanity to these people? Why did he say, oh, well, you guys are living like a warring nation, and so I'm not going to tell you don't own other people.
That sounds
when that is for us nowadays, it's unthinkable.
Sounds to me like we're going to need
that. Sounds like part two of our seminar.
I'm just going to ask one last quick question to Chris and Zach. Do you guys feel that maybe some stuff in the Bible is written and could be very easily distorted throughout time? I want to give you a quick example here. Several months ago, we did an episode that was one of our stories of another brilliant moment, was a story of how a local tribe in Indonesia found a sex doll that fell out of an airplane somehow, and they thought it was an angel. Within 2 months, they had dressed up the angel, they were feeding her food, and there were legends building around her already about how she was crying and some healings were happening because of a sex doll. That tribe thought it was an angel. Do you feel that maybe after 2,000 years of the story of Jesus, that maybe a lot of it is very, very exaggerated?
No. We've got decent records for what went on at that time, like as far as what the followers of Jesus said that he did and said, closer than other biographies that we have for ancient historians. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have a lot more evidence for other historians, but as far as biographies go, the Gospels are pretty damn close to the events. 40 years at the very most is not that far of a stretch. So the chances of things being as distorted as that, I don't think is very plausible.
You're also looking at manuscripts and other things that from the earliest manuscripts that we found pieces of
we're constantly looking at the Bible compared to these old manuscripts and constantly finding out that the only differences are maybe a comma or a period or little words that haven't seemed to change the meaning of anything. The oldest manuscripts take the ESV or the NASB today, they're almost word for word. And so if you're talking about distortion from storytelling, in 2,000 years that hasn't happened because we still have the same accuracy as back then.
You and I certainly have not seen the same data on that. But anyway,
if you show me the oldest manuscripts and how they don't line up with our Bible today, that would be pretty impressive.
Okay, fair enough. I'll maybe take on that challenge.
Can I add one last thing on that?
Really quick, bud.
That doesn't mean though that teachings haven't been distorted by other people. Mm-hmm. And one thing I wanted to point out, even with that guy down south, it's not really fair to equate extremists with mainstream teachings. People can do stupid things. It doesn't matter what group you're part of.
See how he looked at me right away when he said that. And on that note, thank you so much, guys, for being with us on the show today. And what a conversation. We've almost got 2 hours of this going on here.
Wow.
Yeah, so... You'll have to come back for part 2 for sure.
What we're going to have to do is divide this into segments and maybe do one on original sin and then do one on resurrection. Zone in on one topic.
So thank you for joining us today.
You're going to get Chris prepared then.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. That's okay. I'm fine with that. Thank you for joining us on the show today. You can follow us on leftofthevalley.com. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at LETV podcast. You can send us an email, leftofthevalley@outlook.com. You can send your complaints to Nancy on the 3rd floor. Coming up, next week we have our old friend David Fitzgerald. I'll be joining us for his latest book. And on the 17th, we'll be talking to Luke Fevrin about Christianity inserting itself into the school system, especially in the places like Alberta. On the 25th, we'll be doing a show live at the stage in Mission with Dr. Drance and Dr. Del Rey about the whole LGBTQ thing. Hopefully, we'll put that to an end. In March,
I think you should clarify that.
Yeah, the bigotry.
We're
not putting the
trying
LGBT.
to shine light on the science behind it. And
she's saving my butt yet again.
Yeah.
So in March, we'll be talking to Rebecca Fox about her comic, and we'll also be talking to Ira about biomimicry.
I'm so excited
that'll be
about
on the
that.
10th. Biomimicry. Mm-hmm. So that'll be a very interesting show. And also, don't forget to follow our sister show, So You Think You're a Skeptic, by our friend Tyler, that plays on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Anything else you need to add?
Play the new Harry Potter app.
Of course.
It's awesome.
Are you really surprised that comes up at this point, Kevin?
No, I'm not.
No, it's practically
But it kind of catches me by surprise every time anyway. So.
Did she have to spell it out for you?
Zach, Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
It was really good
Hope to see you
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.
To keep it on the hush, don't wanna affect business. He loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, unintended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen, I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith, and unsubstantiated claims, that's something to be ashamed.